Chaps, 2020 has been an interesting year. We'll decide how interesting a year it is over the next hour. But I am Dan Webb, and this is the Resero Year in Review. I'm joined by Mr. Rich Walker. Hello, Rich.
Hello.
And I'm joined by Mr. Matt Lorrigan. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
Good energy, chaps. Like, great energy. It's just not there.
It's the end of 2020, Dan. What did you expect?
True, yeah. Like,
we are drained.
Outside of games, it's been interesting. Horrific is probably the fair word to explain it. But inside of games and video games and consoles and stuff, what are your general impressions of the year? Go on, Rich. What do you think?
Well, I mean, video games have been the one thing that have kept us sane during all of this. And it's been an interesting year for games. There's been ups and downs, but generally I think, considering, what's happened, developers have come through at the other side and managed to put out some pretty amazing stuff. So
we forget that, right? We forget from the developer's perspective that they've had to create games. Like The Last of Us, they were still working on it at the beginning of the year. Did it get delayed as well, The Last of Us?
Yep.
Right.
I think at the last minute,
Yeah, for a couple of months. Wasn't it? It was meant to come out in March, wasn't it? Was it March?
Didn't it go May to June, I think?
No, Tsushima went from May to June, didn't it?
I don't know. I think they both got delayed. It's all been a bit topsy-turvy this year. It's hard to keep track.
It has. But it's really weird that they have to create the games and, remotely, I guess, now.
Yeah.
But not too bad. I think I agree with you, Rich. Matt, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of games, we've got new consoles, which is always huge, like brand new generation. And some really, really good games came out this year. I wish I'd played a few more. And I'm going to be doing some catching up, I think, in January and February. But really good year for games at the end of the day, even with some delays here and there, just some really quality titles coming out.
Yeah, as well. And if you think about it, usually last year's of console generations aren't particularly great because everybody's gearing up for the new generation. But I feel like this is probably one of the better kind of closing years for a generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
I can't think of a better year. Do you remember the years where Black came out and it performed poorly because it was a PS2 title, right? And we moved to PS3 and 360 era. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It was one of those that was on the cusp. I think there were a fair few games like that, the PS2 era, because the PS2 had such an amazing library of games. And
the install base was massive as well, wasn't it?
And the install base was massive, and there was a bit of a crossover. It still kind of persisted for quite a while after the Xbox.
It really did.
360 came out.
It was getting FIFA for ages, wasn't it? I
was still buying games from my PS2 long after the Xbox 360 had released, and even the PlayStation 3 probably.
Yeah, and I feel like this year, though, we've had some of the best games for the generation this year.
Oh, yeah.
We'll obviously go into more details as we go on throughout the podcast. But just to sum it up, this is how we're going to do it. Like that was a kind of our general impressions. We're going to go through the standout moments, the console launches, this year's biggest games, the surprises, the indies, the new IPs, the year's biggest disappointments, which I'm sure many people know what's coming in that one. And we just kind of wrap up the year then. This will be our last video of the year. Before next year, we start afresh and we look forward to the new generation and new beginnings, I hope.
Seeing what those new consoles can really do.
Yeah.
Let them out a bit.
Because it's not fair at the moment, right? It's they look great and some games look phenomenal. Valhalla looks fantastic on it. Cyberpunk looks pretty decent on it, but obviously not so much on last gen. But there are some games some of the last kind of Final Fantasy VII looked incredible. Yakuza looked great. Doom looked and performed incredible. Ori. There's so many games from this year that were last gen as well that looked phenomenal that we haven't really scratched the surface of next gen yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's kick things off properly then. We're going to talk about three main things of the standout moments of the year. I'll run you through them and then we can kind of pick them apart. But Sony's exclusive dominance, Microsoft buying Bethesda, and the rise of Game Pass, which has just in the last year just gone absolutely mental. And that's kind of tied into a little bit the Bethesda stuff, but also the EA Access stuff and things like that. So I feel like those are the three big talking points of the year, right? I haven't missed anything, have I?
Well, I mean, there's stuff that we have missed, but we're going to get to that later on.
Oh, of course, the Cyberpunk launch, Cyberpunk launch, the Avengers launch, all of that comes under other kind of categories. But
Hot potatoes.
But these are actual kind of
industry level things.
Exactly, these are moments that have ripples throughout the entire industry. Cyberpunk, disappointing, that kind of thing, but like Sony's exclusive dominance and their continuation of that is going to have a ripple into the next gen. Microsoft buying Bethesda is going to have ripples for decades. And the rise of Game Pass is going to change the surface of the thing.
And the three of them are so connected as well, aren't they? Because
they are.
Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda is directly tied to Sony's exclusive dominance. You can see it almost as a direct retaliation, and that is linked with Game Pass, isn't it? In terms of
exactly.
Not only will we have these exclusive games, but they're going to be free essentially if you've got a subscription to play day one. You're not having to shell out 60 quid each time you want to play one. So it's all three of them are linked so closely.
And I guess there's other bits of news that are like, I don't think it's official yet, or it hasn't gone through properly, but like Codemasters being bought out, things like that as well. It seems to be the industry is consolidating a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a bit of that going on.
But right, let's first things first. Like the reason we're talking about Sony's exclusive dominance is because the last year of the console, basically the PS4 and the Xbox One, we have two of their biggest titles. The Last of Us 2, which was just phenomenal across the board, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But first, we'll just touch on kind of Ghost of Tsushima, which was their fastest selling new IP, I want to say. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
And Rich, you reviewed both of those actually for us, didn't you?
I did, yeah. And they were quite close to each other, so it was a hell of a time.
Yeah, right. Especially it was in the middle of lockdown as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. We were a few months in.
Yeah, and we were just coming out of it, I remember. We came out of it in early July, didn't we? So, The Last of Us was it May, was it?
June.
No, it was June, wasn't it? And Ghost of Tsushima was just out of lockdown in July, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, The Last of Us 2, the discourse going around it, completely unfair. What we had was, in my personal opinion, was a absolutely phenomenal game. One of the most memorable games of the year, I want to say.
Yeah. I mean, we all agree on that. I don't understand the massive backlash. If you've played the game, like, how can you not see that as a great piece of work?
Well, that was a lot of it, wasn't it? A lot of the backlash seemed to be coming from people who read the spoilers or read the story before playing it and were upset with the decision that was made, but then didn't follow through and see how that decision was shown and the artistry behind it and stuff like that.
Well, also, after I'd finished playing the game, I went back and read those spoilers afterwards.
Oh, some of them were laughable,
and
right?
some of them weren't even true.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But like as an actual game though, like technically, like the animations, like the world building, the characters, the story, like whether you like it or not, like you have to respect it for what it tried. It was bold, it was brave, and I don't think many other video games have been that bold and brave in terms of storylines, right?
I mean, the fact that we're still talking about it and I'm still thinking about it so many months on, and it's still one of the highlights of the year for me. I genuinely thought it was a proper mature, like, experience, and I hadn't seen anything quite like it since, I guess, The Last of Us 1, really.
Yeah. And this was on PS4 as well, right? Like, what a technical marvel on a console that was 7 years old.
Yeah. It perhaps puts some other games to shame in terms of what those base consoles can do and how much they can push out in terms of visuals and performance.
I feel like you're alluding to something, Matt.
No, nothing at all. I'm not saying anything, but yeah, I mean, it was a real visual standout, and like even outside of the real sort of strong hate squad around it, like obviously some people didn't necessarily gel with the themes exactly, but there was such a mature conversation going on outside of that of people who maybe weren't quite as high on it, but it was a conversation you don't normally get around games like this, and it was like you say, it was so mature in its themes and stuff like that it prompted that sort of conversation.
Yeah, but then on the flip side, like The Last of Us 2, really kind of gritty, mature, and then we had this really kind of chill but like wonderful game of Ghost of Tsushima, which was the world building, some of the art style and stuff like that, and just the concepts. They were completely different to The Last of Us 2, but also just as memorable. Like things like people are going to remember the wind navigation, the guiding wind, and being able to change the weather with a flute, and the chasing foxes through meadows, and also stabbing people and chopping their heads off and stuff like that. But I feel like Ghost of Tsushima as well was another fantastic exclusive for Sony. Like it's obvious that if you look at the Game of the Year list, like let's just take the general one, which is the Game Awards. Like it was dominated by Sony. The Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and it's not surprising considering the level of quality that they created last year or this year.
Ghost of Tsushima is the guys and gals who made Sly Cooper and Infamous going, fuck it, let's take Akira Kurosawa's samurai movies and make a kick-ass open world game with it. And it succeeds on all fronts. It's just, I love that game so much.
Yeah,
and they're still supporting it, right? They put a co-op mode out in the last couple of months.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, the co-op mode. I haven't got around to playing it yet, but by all accounts I've heard it's very good.
You haven't played it, right? Have you played either of these yet? You've got some catching up to do.
No, I've got plenty of catching up to do. There's a weird time of the year with these ones, but I do love Sucker Punch as a developer. I think the stuff they put out is all, even when it doesn't do everything right, they're such fun games that Sucker Punch make, and everything I've seen of Ghost of Tsushima just suggests that, from like the stances in combat and that vast open world. That out of the two, like as much as The Last of Us sounds incredible, I think I'm most excited to get stuck into Ghost of Tsushima. That sort of real like video gamey feel to it, and that setting just seems absolutely stunning.
Yeah, like The Last of Us 2 is a really gritty experience that, like, sometimes it isn't fun, but it's enthralling. It's the edge of your seat stuff that you just can't put down. Whereas Ghost of Tsushima is kind of the opposite. It's kind of tranquil. You sit down by a river and you write a haiku, and it's just a really fun video game that you just traversing the environment is just like, oh, this is great.
But at the core, there's still quite a dark story as well.
Oh, there was.
You know, grounded in history as well.
Yes, for sure. But you've got the kind of, I guess, the two polarizing aspects of Ghost of Tsushima. The one where you're running through meadows on a horse, and then the other one where you're creeping into camps and like decapitating generals. So and kind of taking over forts. But like Sony had a good year. Well, end to the era with two massive exclusives. But to kind of shake that up, we touched upon it when we kind of gave you a rundown of the category. Microsoft that bought Bethesda out of nowhere. I mean, I think it's been rumoured for many years, like probably 5-10 years. Like I've heard rumours about this kind of thing, but it finally happened, and Microsoft trying to answer their critics when it comes to exclusives.
Yeah, this was mad. Like I genuinely couldn't. I was in shock from this for like days. Like there's a couple of days later, and you're like, yeah, no, Microsoft now owns Bethesda. Like, what the hell? These are the guys who make The Elder Scrolls and Fallout, like some of the biggest, not just the biggest open world games, but some of the, the most successful open world games that anyone's made ever, and RPGs and everything. And the fact that Microsoft now just has the ability, if they want, to be like, these are just exclusive to our console, or not. Like, they've got such a strange approach to things with obviously Game Pass and stuff, in terms of being like, well, maybe it's just first on Game Pass, or maybe it's better on Game Pass. But that power that Microsoft now has over Sony to suddenly be like, oh yeah, the next Elder Scrolls game, one of the most hyped games ever, won't be on PS5. It's a real game changer, and it's so different to how every other big platform holder deals with exclusives. Like Sony sort of built up a team over time. Like even Insomniac obviously got bought recently, but that was after years of collaboration, and they were very much a developer first, make one or two series mostly. This is them buying a publisher and going, we're buying all your IPs and all your development teams. Like it's
but I also love the fact that the first two games out of Bethesda will be PS5 exclusives.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? Deathloop and
it's absolutely fantastic.
No,
see the Ghostwire Tokyo.
Yeah, Ghostwire Tokyo.
Yeah, so I just love that kind of that little note to kick off the new generation.
Yeah.
Microsoft are publishing more PS5 exclusives than Xbox Series X exclusives. I love that. I know, obviously, deals are in place and they go forward. I'm just having a bit of fun.
But they could have. The thing is, they probably could have gotten some lawyers and probably gotten those off PS5 if they wanted to.
True.
But they've just
they don't want to be those people, right?
Yeah, they're just like, no, it's cool, it's chill. Those can be part of PS5 exclusives. All the money's still coming directly to us anyway. So
I guarantee, though, that if that was Elder Scrolls, that they would have gone back on that. But 2 new IPs, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they can afford to be a little bit riskier,
likely to be lower selling as well. Like they're the praise, aren't they? That Bethesda premium title that maybe doesn't hit the mass market. Like,
and I'm going to transition perfectly here. They are perfect Game Pass games, if you ask me.
They would be,
New IPs, untested, and then this year, obviously, we've seen the rise of Game Pass. It's been around for a while, but I feel like this year it's gone from, well, a relatively known thing to Microsoft's biggest feather in its cap.
Well, look at what you got this year. I mean, for me, like a Yakuza fanboy, Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami, and Yakuza Kiwami 2, and you got Streets of Rage 4 as well. All on Game Pass.
Dragon Quest 11 just hit it recently. Exactly. They've never had a Dragon Quest game before, and now they've got one of the best ones ever made, and it's like they don't need to take a risk releasing it on Xbox to be like, oh, we don't know how much it will sell. It's no, just put it on our console. We'll put it on Game Pass.
Yeah, you'll get new fans.
Like it takes away that barrier to be like, we're gonna risky games that might not hit the Xbox audience. Now that risk is gone. Microsoft pays the money up front and just says this will go to a wider audience, and like that's going to happen with Control, likely. Like now that that's on Game Pass, that's going to happen with indies like Call of the Sea and even Monster Rancher. I think just hit that recently.
Do you mean Slime Rancher?
No, not Slime Rancher. It's either Monster. I think it's Monster Rancher or Monster Trainer. It's a little like
Monster Sanctuary.
Monster Sanctuary, that's the one. A little like indie Pokemon one. It's going to happen to that. All of these games that now coming day and date as well, not a year later, not months later. They're coming on launch day. Like that's it's a huge boon for developers at the end of the day. Like it gets more people playing their game. It boosts the idea of a sequel. Like it's such a strange. It's still so new as a concept as a way to get games to people. And I'm absolutely loving it. Like it's a fantastic way to get new content.
Yeah, especially with I'm going to transition perfectly here, especially with the new consoles as well, because that means that and the smart delivery stuff that Xbox did as well, which means that you can just pick up games on one generation, play them on the next. If you've got a Series X, you can play all the backwards compatibility titles that are on the Game Pass as well, and there's loads of them. EA Access is now on there, and loads of Bethesda titles are starting to come through, so the catalogue is just getting bigger and bigger and better and better. I do fear, though, that there will be a price increase at some point, because it's cheap as chips at the moment.
It is so cheap, but I mean, but also you can buy it for like 3 years now, so even if there's a price increase... That's what I did. Yeah, exactly. If there's a price increase in a month, a lot of people will have this paid off for a couple of years anyway, so it's not. I can't imagine they're in too much of a rush to do it, especially when they're still selling new ones to people on Android. People on iPhone next year now can buy Game Pass and get access to all these games. Like it's it's huge, and I think it's also interesting because Game Pass is now going to be bigger, even bigger going forward. Now that Microsoft's added to its first-party studios, like now you've got the idea of these big AAA games that are coming out, next year, year after that. If they can increase their amount of first-party games to meet, to get closer to Sony, and they're all on Game Pass day one, it's such a good proposition.
Yeah, and also it became a selling point for their next-gen consoles, which came out in November. God, it feels like months ago.
It does.
It was only like a month and 10 days ago. Yeah. So obviously the new consoles came out in 2020. There were a few interesting issues, I guess, and
teething problems.
Yeah, across the board, right? There was obviously the lack of stock, and that's still an issue now.
Yeah.
The consoles themselves, though, like fantastic machines, but there's been issues with them. Obviously, it's a small amount, but like most of it is like UI issues. But like I feel like the teething problems are mostly done now.
I feel like both of my consoles had crashes on sort of day 1 and day 2.
Yeah.
But they seem to have stabilised and have had no problems since. So
I feel like the Xbox was the slightly more accomplished console on launch. Like, it didn't take anything away.
Yes.
It only really added features. PS5 is still...
It had that sense of continuity, didn't it?
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, it's this again.
But also, that's to me, it didn't feel like a new console for that reason. Because it's like, when you boot up the PS5 for the first time, it's like, oh, new dashboard, new features.
Yeah.
Like you've got the DualSense and stuff like that. And then you've got the jump to... I don't know what's where you pick up
activities,
the cards, activities. Yeah. That's what I'm looking for, Matt. It's got activities and stuff like that, and it's got a new UI and a new dashboard. Whereas with the Series X, it was like, here's your new console, here's the same dashboard, and it's great, go nuts. So it didn't have that shine for me, but I mean, who cares about that after a while? It's the new consoles to play the new games, or I would say lack of games at launch, which we'll kind of go through now. But the actual units themselves, like PS5, like I've had no issues with it really. In the Xbox Series X, I've probably put 300 hours into games since it launched. So I think I'm 120 hours into Cyberpunk already. Yeah, I know, and I've only had that for 10 days. So my life has been Cyberpunk for a while, but
you've been assimilated into Night City.
Exactly, but like the consoles themselves, absolute beasts. But we won't see, I guess, their potential really until next year and beyond.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we've already seen the PS5 doing some pretty impressive stuff.
Yes,
I mean, Astro's Playroom alone is pretty major.
Oh,
but I was going to say, I think on Xbox Series X, the first thing you're going to see that's interesting is the Medium, maybe early next year.
Yeah, it's one of the first next-gen exclusives for Xbox, isn't it? Because they had a couple of exclusives, but they were all playable on Xbox One as well, weren't they? And then for a long time, Sony were advertising their stuff as if it was PS5 only, and then they revealed that almost everything was on PS4 as well, except for Demon's Souls and Astro, which is
sneaky, right?
It's a strong combo, but there was a good amount. There's a good few months where we all were under the assumption that Miles Morales was PS5 only, and it just wasn't.
And it looks great on the PS4 as well, which is really odd.
It does.
But yeah, so Sony had a fairly solid launch lineup, whereas Microsoft didn't really have much of a lineup. They're like, here's the console, buy it, get it Game Pass, and then as time goes on, you'll be able to play some amazing games on it. But yeah, Sony started, obviously, Demon's Souls was absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
It was, for me, it was a great game, but also it was more about the fact that it was, if you hadn't played Demon's Souls before, you kind of enter the genre, probably Bloodborne, which is where I entered.
That's where I entered.
It allows you to see the roots and how the kind of genre, the Souls-like genre, has changed. And I really appreciated that about it. Because a lot of things have been done for the better.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, Sackboy, you reviewed that, Matt. That was great, good fun.
Yeah, really good fun. Really good multiplayer game as well. And I sort of just love that the PS5 launched with 2 3D platformers. Like, when was the last time you had a console launch with 2 platformers? It's like...
Yeah, it's true.
It's just kind of nuts. Like, Sackboy's great fun. Astro's Playroom was obviously just like a real showcase for the DualSense controller. Because I didn't have particularly high expectations. Everything I'd heard about haptic feedback and whatever sounded like what Nintendo
gimmicky
had been doing with HD Rumble. Everyone was saying the same things. And then you get your hands on it, you're like, oh no, this is a big deal. Like Astro
feels next gen.
Yeah, because Astro is a good game by itself, but it's so elevated by what that controller does and how it makes you feel when you're in levels, and that sort of that level of immersion that almost feels VR-like when you're, when you can feel raindrops hitting the controller, like as if you've got the umbrella up and stuff like that. Like it genuinely does feel immersive. And I tell you what, it's interesting in terms of multi-platform stuff, because if you're making the choice whether to play on Xbox or PS5 and the visuals are mostly the same, would you go for the controller, the one with the DualSense features? Like, that's something that I'm going to have to consider with multi-platform games going forward.
Yeah, I don't think I am. After playing Demon's Souls with the like with Astro's Playroom, which feels like a tech demo, which is a fantastic tech demo, and it's a genius idea to bundle it with the console. But like when I was playing Demon Souls and like trying to put 100 arrows into the blue dragon or the green or the red dragon or both dragons, can't remember which one. Like you feel the tension pulling back the bow, and you do that for like 100 arrows. Like, for big expansive RPGs and stuff like that, which is my shtick. I can't see me using the DualSense that much. I'll probably turn it off.
I was going to say, yeah, you can turn it off, can't you?
Which means, yeah, but for me, then it doesn't become a selling point for the games. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose.
The multi-platform games. But yeah, like Astro's Playroom, Sackboy, Demon's Souls, great. Miles Morales was absolutely fantastic. Rich, you spent quite a bit of time with that. Loved it.
I did, yeah. I intend to platinum it over the Christmas period. It was just great to be back in that city again. But they changed it enough and gave it that wintry feel, and Miles was, a totally different kind of superhero to Pete, who's obviously established in that world and has, wiped all the villains away once already.
So also a proper Christmas game as well, right?
Yeah, it feels like a proper Christmas game. But I think the masterstroke is Miles himself. He's just, the way they kind of presented his life and his kind of transition from this kind of meek kid into full-fledged superhero. I just loved it. I just think it's one of the year's best.
It's such a streamlined game as well. Like it's
brilliant.
It really feels like, because I loved Spider-Man, but this feels improved in some ways as well. Like even the swinging felt a little bit better when I was playing it. Like, but also it's just so focused in its goals, and like the very small cast of characters and stuff work brilliantly. And like you say, Miles is just brilliant. He's such a charming character to be with, and to have that different dichotomy with Peter Parker, where he is, like you say, the experienced superhero, and Miles, you're doing the origin story, and it would have been so easy to make him feel like Peter Parker point two, but he feels like such his own character and his own dynamics with his own relationships. It's a really good, accomplished game.
I'm a big fan of the whole him phoning him up and speaking to him on the phone. It's like, shall I come back? He's like, no, I'm fine. Don't worry, I've got this covered. I just love that aspect of it. I've not put a lot of time into it. I've probably put like 5 or 6 hours into it, but not properly. So that's going to be another Christmas game for me. But yeah, like obviously Sony's launch lineup, I would say very good, whereas Microsoft's, like I said, mostly third party. Tetris Effect connected, but obviously that's the improved version from the PS4 game from last year.
And it received the patch to add those features on PS4 as well.
Exactly. So the Falconeer was that an Xbox exclusive? Was it?
Yeah,
it was.
But not next gen. It was like also.
Yeah,
Xbox One as well.
Yeah, Xbox One and Xbox Series X, and it was a decent game. It's probably a really interesting and good indie to play. But I found myself frustrated with it because it is, it's one man making it. It's a really ambitious game, and it maybe just doesn't reach those highs. It needed to be around more big titles. It didn't really. It's not a selling title in itself. It's more of a bonus, I'd say. But there's not the game. You haven't got the other games there for it to be a bonus too. But the Xbox Series X launch was almost better if you didn't have an Xbox before, because then you've got next gen Ori to play and next gen. Gears 5 and all those games.
Forza. Forza Horizon.
If you've had Forza Horizon's fantastic as well, so everyone should play that. Because a lot of people will have missed the Xbox One era because of how they fucked up the intro to it and then just never recovered. So they've got all those games to come in, and also Gears Tactics as well, which was great on PC. So if you didn't have a PC, you can play Gears Tactics. So there's a lot there for the Xbox owners. And obviously we'll transition and move on slightly from the console launches to actually the year's biggest games. Well, the ones that we haven't talked about already. We've already talked about The Last of Us. Well, actually, all the PlayStation stuff we've talked about. So this is where we talk more the third-party stuff. I want to say the odd Xbox game, but I think there's like one in the list that I can see. Maybe one. When
one that's truly exclusive. Even that's not truly exclusive.
Not anymore.
Really.
No, I guess not. It's on Switch, right?
Yeah.
We're obviously talking about Ori and the Will of the Wisp, but let's kick things off with a title that I used as my kind of first kind of step into next gen, and that was Valhalla, which I want to sum it up as a fantastic game, but not as good as Odyssey. I think that's fair, right, Rich?
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Of course.
Yeah, Odyssey's still the high watermark for me in the kind of new series of Assassin's Creed games that we've seen, the RPG years.
It's a great trilogy, though, right? Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla now.
Yeah, fantastic. And Valhalla does enough stuff that's different to those other two to mark it out as something interesting and worth playing.
Like obviously you're a Viking, gone are the islands. Now you've got the roaming fields and meadows of England with the waterways, which is pretty cool. But obviously you can build a town this time, which I actually really liked. I wasn't too sold on it to start with. I thought it was a gimmick. But I think the longer you play and the bigger it gets, and you do missions for and kind of hang around with your inhabitants. Well, not your inhabitants, but the village.
The people what live there.
The people what live there, yeah, them people. I just found it really cool, but like the combat's still great. It looks fantastic and performs fantastic on the next gen console. So yeah, that was kind of my entry point into next gen, and I was like, oh, next gen's pretty cool. I can get used to this.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it was one of those where it was announced and revealed for the first time, and they were like, we're doing Vikings. And I was like, okay, whatever, fine. I feel like God of War kind of did quite a definitive rendition of Viking lore and worlds and stuff. But this was very much its own thing, and being an Assassin's Creed game rooted in the history. And turned out actually really well, and I really liked it.
But, Rich, I bet you didn't like it as much as Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Well, nothing's as good as Yakuza Like a Dragon, is it? Nothing's as good as Yakuza, full stop.
Well, I could argue many other games, but let's not go there.
Nah.
But this is... we've been talking about this a little bit in the office, and by office I mean virtual office, obviously with everything going on with COVID. But, it was one of the biggest risks I've ever known for a developer... to just change its core gameplay kind of mechanics and go a completely different direction. You know what? It reminds me a little bit of Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah.
When they went from turn-based to... what was it?
Real time.
What was it called, though? The RTs, the RTB, was it? Or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah,
of course.
It's the reverse of that this time around, isn't it? It's going backwards almost.
It is. And it's weird to see the popularity of Yakuza get bigger and Final Fantasy be nowhere near as big as it was years ago. Does that mean that technically turn-based games sell better?
I mean,
I don't know about that.
It is interesting though, because obviously, like you say, Yakuza was only getting bigger at this point. It was growing an audience, and huge risk to then suddenly be like, okay, we're at probably the biggest audience we've ever had. We've got this new game. We're going to bring it out on console launch as well for the Xbox. Let's make it a more old-fashioned and less popular turn-based system, and everyone loved it as well. People were so hesitant about it going in, and I've not heard anyone come out of it and be like, I like it less or anything.
I wasn't into the idea at all. I thought it was an April Fool's joke, and I was like, well, it should have stayed an April Fool's joke. What are they doing? But no, it came off. They knew what they were doing, and they pulled it off.
And obviously, new character as well, Rich. But they've somehow, and I don't know how they managed to do this, they managed to keep it wacky but serious. Like, they mix the two. It's like as if it just bounces from one to the other. And I don't know how they do that and people take them seriously, but it just works perfectly.
I don't know another series that can kind of walk that tightrope between silliness in the sub-stories and the mini-games and things, and then still have this serious story at the centre. Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic. There's an art to that, isn't there?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the developer, Ryu Gegatoku, they're awesome. And one of my games of the year for sure, Like a Dragon.
Yeah. I've not put enough time in to make that kind of statement, but I think I'm 20 hours in and I'm absolutely loving it to pieces.
It just blew my expectations out of the water, you know. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was.
Rich, what did you expect of Final Fantasy VII? And Rich, I'm not purposely keeping Matt out of the question here. I just happen to have them in an order of all the games that Rich reviewed. But yeah, obviously Final Fantasy VII, we were talking a little bit about Final Fantasy then. The remake, 7, obviously massive game, one of your favourites of all time. But this, completely different art, but equally as impressive though, right?
Well, the original is what brought me into JRPGs. I'd never played one before. So obviously I have all the nostalgia and the history with the game. And I even replayed the section that I knew this new remake would be of, so I could compare them directly. And within the grand scheme of the full game itself, it's like 4 hours. But they somehow managed to make a sort of 30-40 hour game out of such a small portion of the full thing. And then also twist the events a bit and change things and flesh things out in such a massive way. And it shouldn't have worked, but it did. Another kind of risky game in a similar vein, I suppose, because the combat was completely different too.
Yeah. Did you like the combat? Because I know it was supposed to. It looked almost like a mix of turn-based and real-time, which Final Fantasy VII was almost trying to do back then with the ATB system and stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, this I thought was the perfect kind of balance. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but to them I say bollocks.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was great.
Nice.
Is it the same as 15's, right?
It's similar to 15, but maybe with I don't know, a little more of the DNA from Final Fantasy VII, perhaps.
So you slow the game down, don't you? To make choices at times.
So a little bit like Dragon Age Origins, because I've not played it, so I'm just trying to get some perspective.
Yeah, although doesn't Dragon Age Origins kind of pause the game completely?
It does actually, yeah.
So it's kind of a middle ground, I guess, but it works really well. I mean, you could just play it real time all the way through. I think you might not get far, but you could.
Okay.
So no, it was good. It's you could adopt either strategy, I suppose, and it had a classic mode as well if you wanted to go back to how it sort of was, or something closer to how it was.
Okay. But yeah, it's on my to-do list.
It's brilliant.
What isn't on my to-do list, actually it is, I lied, is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I've not finished it. I've done most of it. So it isn't on my to-do list. But that was around the same time as Final Fantasy VII as well, right? It was around the March, wasn't it? Around the COVID
around March.
End of Feb. But yeah, obviously, Matt, you loved your time with that, and you've been playing it recently because of the new 6K and the 120 FPS. You've just got 120 FPS TV, right? So you can now experience it.
Super smooth, and that game is already smooth. No, Ori's such a good game, and it's stuck in my memory as well. I played a lot of games this year, and I played this back in March, and it's something that I just pops back into my head every now and again. I'd say probably in retrospect, out of the games I've played, which is respectively less than you guys, so I've not got a lot of the comparisons to make, but this is probably my game of the year. It's just it's such a good platformer, and it's such a good Metroidvania, and it's so the first game was brilliant. I mean, we put it in our games of the decade list, didn't we? Ori and the Blind Forest.
Oh yeah.
And this, I'd say, is a way more balanced game, and you get upgrades way quicker, and there's just this pace to it which is fantastic, but it also has moments to sit, and where the first game is way more about survival when you're lost in a forest, this one's more about hope and building up this town. It's just a incredible game. Looks gorgeous, sounds gorgeous, plays like absolute butter. I can't say
plays like butter. Is that a saying? I've never heard that before.
Well, it is
plays
now.
Like butter.
Patent pending.
Okay.
Patent pending.
I've never played with butter, to be fair.
No, it's just so smooth. It's got that difficulty still, but it just plays so well that you'd never come up against any resistance. Basically,
there's more combat as well in this one, right?
Yeah, it just improved upon anything.
I say more combat. Was there much combat in the last one? I can't remember. I don't think there was, right?
No, you just had these weird sort of homing missiles, and enemies were more there to throw you off your platforming, I guess. Whereas this actually encourages you to think about how you're fighting and stuff like that, rather than just to be it's an obstacle. I don't think there's. I'd go out on a limb and say this was one of the best sequels that's ever been released. I can't think of many that.
Mass Effect 2.
Well, go again.
Half-Life 2.
Yeah, I mean,
Mass Effect 2, Half-Life 2.
I'd put this up there with many
Yakuza
of them.
2.
Yakuza 2.
Streets of Rage 2.
Oh god, Cyberpunk 2078.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. No, it's just a bloody good game. Like, there's not too much I can say about it. It's just it hits almost everything that I want from a game. And to be fair, it's still on my to-do list because I'm like 98% complete on that. So I just need to mop up
Unbelievable.
1 or 2 collectibles and things like that. But no, great game. Play it, Rich.
I have played a lot of games this year, Matt, and I agree with you. It's fantastic.
Nice.
So, yeah, I've kind of validated your opinion there.
And that is all I wanted.
And this is what these kind of podcasts are about, to validate your opinions.
Absolutely.
Or tell you that you're wrong and you're nuts. So thanks for listening, folks. But yeah, so we're going to kind of scoot through the next 2 or 3. But they were fantastic games, worthy of a shout out. Doom Eternal was fantastic.
Great game.
Black Ops had a great year. Rich was a big fan of that.
I was. The campaign was genuinely good.
And the Zombies... fantastic.
Zombies also
multiplayer good.
Yeah.
Also Warzone kind of built into that as well, so that's great.
Yeah.
And obviously Resident Evil 3, although short, we loved it to pieces.
Sweet.
Well, Rich did,
Short
because
but
he's the only
sweet.
one.
Well, just
that
pure
played it.
tension from beginning to end.
Well paced,
good
right?
horror.
Do you
Good
know what I mean?
horror.
Like no let up, just pure horror survival for 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah, true to the original as well, isn't it? That was shorter as well.
Yeah, I think this one was actually missing a bit of content from the original, but
that's the only criticism, though, right? Like,
yeah,
otherwise,
that's one
fantastic.
of the main problems. Brilliant.
But yeah, so like these are still some of the year's biggest games that we're talking about, but obviously these are more of the surprises, games that really came out of nowhere. A couple that I'm going to kind of mention to kick things off: Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. More because like I was just surprised at how good they actually kind of recreated that nostalgia.
Yeah,
especially so after the XBLA PSN remake of the first one, which was a disaster.
Right? Yeah, and the bad.
And then Tony Hawk 5 as well.
5 was pretty bad as well.
Yeah, and one that me and you played, Rich, was Minecraft Dungeons, which was surprisingly good and also a Game Pass game. So if you've got Game Pass, play it. And I love a good ARPG. And that
I'm not a big fan of ARPGs, and I still liked Minecraft Dungeons.
Exactly, and we spent quite a bit of time on that. Actually, we played through it all, didn't we? And just grinded a little bit as well. We wanted to go back and do the hardest difficulty, but we never got around to it.
Yeah.
We should do that over Christmas, Rich.
Yeah.
And also,
some time.
Speaking of killing time, what about killing zombies? Rich, you loved Zombie Army 4, right?
Mate, Zombie Army 4 is so much fun. Great horde mode. I mean, you're shooting Nazi zombies of all shapes and sizes. I mean, what's not
Zombie
to love?
tanks.
It has zombie tanks
shit,
everywhere.
With rib
zombie
cages.
Tanks.
Yeah, exactly.
I
What more do you
forgot.
want?
I forgot about that. That's amazing.
The DLC has a zombie Zeppelin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. So is it alive?
Yeah, apparently so.
Is it like a sentient tank that's a zombie?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't like say anything or,
Big zombie lung.
it just drives itself around and that with zombie bits.
Does it make zombie noises?
No.
Okay.
I don't think it's an exact science that's gone into
I
it.
know. I like the real questioning of Rich though. Explain the Zeppelin. You can't bring it up and not explain it.
I didn't develop the game.
Oh really? Oh, okay. Yeah. I loved that was my sticking point. But I was trying to move quite quickly to get us back on schedule because we're not on schedule at all. But that was I was like, wait a minute, zombie tanks? Like, are they actual? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Speaking of zombie tanks, Immortals Phoenix Rising has nothing to do with them.
No?
And Matt, that was
segue.
Yeah, right. Mate, I am the king of segues. Awful segues. But yeah, that was a massive surprise this year, right? Like, you sunk a lot of time into that.
Yeah.
Some would say too much, but I won't say that, Matt. I'll just infer it.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I didn't have particularly high expectations for it. It just sort of looked... And also,
I don't think anyone did.
No, because Ubisoft wasn't talking much about it for ages. Like, they announced it at E3 last year, didn't they?
Yeah, as Gods and Monsters,
Yeah.
right? And then
It
they had
got
that
more
whole
publicity
hoo-ha.
from the name change.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And they just didn't
What was
show...
the name change before? Because, what was it? Was it with the energy drink, Monster?
Apparently that's the rumour. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, okay.
It sounds
I'll put the
dubious
caveat.
to me.
Yeah. I'm not accusing Monster. Please don't sue me. But that was the rumour, and I don't know whether it's true or not. It's unsubstantiated.
I think that was a surprise for me because I just wrote it off as Assassin's Creed Odyssey for kids.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Which is probably why Matt loved it.
To be fair, yeah, it could very well be. It's basically Assassin's Creed Odyssey crossed with Breath of the Wild.
It's a little bit shameless Breath of the Wild clone at times, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's sort of brilliant because of that. Like, it's not a lot.
Plagiarism is not brilliant, Matt.
But the thing is, that's the thing. It's not plagiarism. It's just taking loads of different ideas and putting them together in a very similar way. But it streamlines a lot of the stuff that Breath of the Wild sort of did, because obviously that wasn't a perfect game. It streamlines a lot of that. It's got this great loop of just like finding a puzzle and then finding a quest and then finding a big fight to do and then finding a vault to jump into. Like, there's all these. You'd never go about 5 minutes without finding like something just a little bit fun to do and genuinely funny as well. Like, constantly making like real deep cut references to like classic Greek mythology and making it really, really funny. Like, I just had a great time with it. I couldn't put it down at times. Like, and that's always a good sign.
Do you know what else is a good sign, Rich?
These are getting
Star
better.
Wars Squadrons.
Star Wars Squadrons. Squadrons or Squadron?
Squadrons.
That was a good sign of how to make a good spacey Star Wars game, right?
Well, it's basically a spiritual successor to X-Wing vs TIE Fighter, and I love me a spiritual successor.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, you couldn't change out of cockpit view, but after the first 5 minutes playing it, I couldn't give a shit because it plays really well.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed both the campaign and the multiplayer. I liked the fleet battles where you've got to bring down a big, massive battleship thingamajig. What do they call them? There's a proper name for them. Proper name for the ships.
No.
Anyway, the big ass ship's like a Star Destroyer.
Was it a Star Destroyer?
One of them is, yeah. But then on the Rebel side, New Republic side is something else in it, like a medical frigate or something.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, that's a good little game. But yeah, I am a third-person game person. So as soon as I'm playing Cyberpunk, as soon as I get in a car, third person. Soon as I get in a car, well, GTA obviously, but the first person mode. But if there's a choice, I'm always third person.
Same,
any vehicle. So like Battlefield, you jump into a tank, I'm third person. Actually, Battlefield is only third person, isn't it? I'm trying to think of ones.
No, I think you can.
Can you do first person tanks in Battlefield?
I think you can.
We need a new Battlefield.
Yeah, because you aim through the actual bits, don't you?
Yeah.
That wasn't a sentence, but you know what I'm saying.
I know what you mean. It's not massively practical. You don't have a good view when you're in first person.
But you do have a good view of first person if you're playing Dirt 5. Right?
Yeah,
that was a good one.
I don't play that in first person.
Do you not?
No.
Those are the kind of games that. There's the perfect example. I play Dirt games in third person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though everybody plays them, mostly everybody plays them in first person.
You really like Dirt 5, didn't you, Rich?
I was going to say you're a winner either way, really, because it looks fantastic and it plays so well. It's basically, it feels like a new MotorStorm to me.
And also,
oh my God, that sounds amazing.
Last gen and new gen,
exactly.
Right?
Sorry?
Like last gen, it looks fantastic as well, right? You said you couldn't get your head around it.
No, I couldn't. I was playing on Xbox One X and I was like, how the hell does it look this damn good? How is this not like a next gen game? It was just, I couldn't find fault with it. It was gorgeous. Absolutely stunning game. And it plays so well. It's so much fun. The presentation, the career. I think it's Codemaster's best racing game.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah, I really do. It sounds like some hyperbolic silliness, but I stand by that.
Fair enough.
But now that Codemasters have been bought, is that official yet, right?
No, apparently there's a bit of a bidding war between Take-Two and EA, I think.
But soon
they'll be EA have outbid them.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I heard that. But soon they'll be owned by somebody else and they'll no longer be independent.
That's going to be interesting.
But speaking of independence and indies, 2020 was a good year for indies. We'll kind of blitz through these, but we'll stop on a couple. Call it, say, Rich. Did you, Rich? Was that you, Matt, that reviewed that?
Rich reviewed it. I've played
Matt
it.
also
you both
played
it,
it,
right? Yeah.
Great game.
That was great game. I played Manifold Garden, which was kind of out last year on PC, but this year on consoles, and it's absolutely fantastic. People should play that. Matt, you enjoyed your time with Creeks, right?
Oh God, yeah, really good
Which is
puzzle title.
Amanita's newest puzzle game.
Yeah.
I actually previewed it earlier on in the year, and I thought it was fantastic. Before COVID dropped, actually.
Really good. One of those games that's actually gotten better in my memory. Like, I obviously reviewed it at the time, and since then I'm like, that's probably a better game than I thought it was. Like, it's really stuck with me.
I'd like to play it. It's on my list. Before we touch upon the big one that Rich will want to talk about for about 20 minutes, Lair of the Clockwork God, you absolutely adored that as well, Rich. That was out earlier on in the year on PC, and then in the August on consoles?
September, I think, on Xbox, and then slightly later on PlayStation. But just, like you say, genuinely funny, but it's the kind of hybrid gameplay that was really cool as well. It was the kind of interplay between the adventure game aspect and the sort of platforming aspect, and also the conflict between the protagonists, Ben and Dan, and their kind of stick in the mud kind of, adherence to each genre. And it's just really well written and really, really fun to play and clever, a really genuinely clever game.
It's nice to see those games get a wider audience and come to console, because I played the original Ben and Dan games on PC back in the day.
Yeah, so did I.
And those were brilliant and funny, but they were so niche. And I think they sold them through their own website. It never even came to Steam or anything for ages. So it's nice to see these hit Xbox, PlayStation. Great game.
Yeah, Rich, genuinely very good.
All right, and Rich, I'm just going to let you talk about Wax Lyrical for 2 minutes on Streets of Rage 4. Go.
All right, I'll try to keep it short. So, obviously, 26, 27 years, whatever, since Streets of Rage 3. Me and my mate, we played these growing up as kids. Not growing up as adults, that doesn't make sense.
Well, no, because technically you can still grow up as an adult.
That's true. This kind of defined... Streets of Rage kind of defined my childhood, that was the game we used to talk about on the playground and go on and on about, and the fantasy was always, Streets of Rage 4, when will that happen? And I didn't ever think it would, and then 2020 comes along and shit, here it is. So it was pure fantasy fulfillment, and it was good, amazing.
I think that's the key thing, right? That it was actually really good as well.
It could have so easily been a disappointment, because build it up in your head for so long, nothing can live up to that.
Literally, that's going to be one of our touching points in about 5 minutes' time as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it delivered anyway. It delivered.
Looked great. Music was great. But it was also Streets of Rage, but with some new additions as well. So,
and the art style, just stunning.
Yeah. I can't segue into the next one. So, right, we'll move on to the next category.
I'll tell you what. Can I help you out?
Go on.
Had it been a failure, Streets of Rage 4, I would have been a shell.
I was thinking more introducing the category, but
I'd have been a new IP.
A lot of the indie games were new IPs as well, which is cool to see. A lot of new IPs coming from indie developers.
That's good, Matt.
I should have used that. I should have said
Mate,
Streets.
that's good, that.
Right, let's
cut it.
We'll do a fake one. We'll do a fake cut.
No. Keep this in. This is great.
No, this is staying in, Rich. But I'm just saying, right, people just jumped now, and it's like, so Streets of Rage 4 was not a new IP like the other indies. Oh, speaking of new IPs, Mortal Shell. There's a couple of big IPs. So before we talk about Mortal Shell 4, guys, there was a couple that didn't really land. Bleeding Edge. You know what? Bleeding Edge played really well. There was just a massive lack of content, and now clearly
no support.
No support.
I haven't heard anything about that game.
Speaking of no support as well, Disintegration came out, and then within 5 months the servers had been turned off, right, Matt?
They'd been disintegrated.
Not even 5 months. It was 3 months or possibly less.
Oh,
it was
my God.
Nuts how short it was. This was a new game from one of the guys who made Halo. You'd expect that
of course,
to have
Marcus Lato, right?
Yeah, you'd have to expect to have some sort of sticking to it, but it just didn't. It's very disappointing.
Well, it seems solid based on what you said about it.
Yeah,
it wasn't a bad game, was it?
No, it wasn't. It probably failed for just being a little bit dull. There wasn't a lot to sell it apart from the fact that it was this sort of shooter RTS combo. But
is it too niche? Is that the issue?
Weirdly, it was more of a strategy game than a shooter, but it was being marketed more as a shooter than a strategy game, and it was more more of a single player game than multiplayer. But it got marketed as multiplayer more than single player, and I feel like it was a real collapse between what the game actually was and what they were trying to sell it as. that's where I sort of feel like it went wrong. But
again, do you feel like a lack of post-launch support has also sort of made it kind of disappear from people's view and consciousness?
They didn't have a chance to give it post-launch support. Though. Like you'd expect that to sort of come in the months afterwards. But I think that the servers were almost dead on arrival. Like it took me a little bit of time to get multiplayer games going so I could get that for the review, and eventually I did. But even then, you're waiting a little bit to get into them.
It's never a good sign, is it?
No, so I'm curious to see how much that sold. That's all I'll say. And it would have possibly been a very good Game Pass game.
Yeah. Maybe it'll find a new life one day on Game Pass.
Possibly.
Who knows?
I played the beta and I really loved it, and that was the multiplayer, and I thought it was great, and I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was unique. But when did it come out? In like May, did it?
I want to say a little bit later, possibly June.
Yeah, I think I was getting involved with the Last of Us stuff with Rich.
Yeah.
And all the videos and that, so I just kind of missed it by. Just passed it by.
It passed you by.
Well, I'll tell you what did pass me by as well was Mortal Shell, because I previewed that and it was great, and you reviewed it, man. It was good fun, right?
Yeah, a really good looking Souls-like. Like it's because it's from a very small team, and a team that hasn't brought anything out before, and it looks like a big AAA game. Like the only thing that really lets you know that it's not is that it ends quite soon. Like it's quite a short Souls-like, and in that way it's very streamlined. Yeah, no, it's quite good in that sense. Like, and I think in the entire game there's 4 weapons and 4 classes that you can get, and there's nothing more, and you really end up perfecting whichever like weapon you get drawn to. And like Josh from Video Gamer played it as well, and we were comparing notes on like which class we played and which weapon we played and the strategies, and it had that really cool shell hardening thing, which was very unique to it, which lets you take a hit regardless, and then you've got the more risky parry. It just had these, it was a real strong Souls-like with some really interesting ideas, and it didn't overstay its welcome. Just very solid new IP, that one.
Did you say 4 weapons and 4 classes?
Yeah.
Right. So 4 guys. That was fairly big. 2020, wasn't it?
That's good. That very good.
But 2020 was the year of Fall Guys, where it came out. Well, it didn't really come out of nowhere, because I'd watched a fair bit of the beta stuff, and I was like, this is going to be big. And it came out, and it was big, and it came out on PS Plus, and absolutely just the numbers just blew everyone away. I assume it's quite big now still, but you don't hear as much of it because it's still massively supported. I think they're doing the Christmas stuff now.
Yeah, season 3.
Yeah, Rich was saying season 3. Which is nuts for a game it only came out in like August, September, I think, around that time, and won season 3 already. So like, fair play to Mediatonic for basically creating a really cool new IP, but just having the kind of the gumption to support it and keep it going. Yeah, and I'd say that's the biggest success story of 2020.
I'd say so, and they've done some really cool things with it as well. Like they've used that new platform they've got. They raised like hundreds of thousands of dollars for charity, with a bidding war for a costume and stuff like that. And
was that the ninja stuff?
Yeah, and Mr. Beast and all of that. And then of
course, Mr. Beast throwing cash at everything.
Yeah, of course. And
what a guy!
But like me and Rhiannon must have put in like probably a good 50 hours into Fall Guys between the two of us especially that first month. I got 10 or 12.
Oh, okay, we've got a bit of a pro here, Rich.
I was just playing a lot of it, and like Rhiannon, I remember Rhiannon getting her first crown after like probably a good 10 or 15 hours was like absolute scenes in our house. And
happy days.
It was just a really joyful game in a time where you probably needed something quite joyful. Like even when you're losing that game, just watching other people fall over each other and trip, and just really good concept for a battle royale that is easy to pick up compared to a lot of other ones. Great game.
Yeah, it's accessible, easy, fun, ridiculous, which is always a good combination. So we've gone from the highs, let's go to the lows. So a little bit more about the year's biggest disappointments, which in my eyes fall down to 3 games. Watchdogs Legion, I had massive hope for that, didn't really deliver. Unfortunately,
it had its moments. It had its moments.
But Watch Dogs 2 was an absolutely fantastic game. Pacing, tone, attitude, everything about it was great. Set pieces. I just felt like Watchdogs Legion, it was too ambitious, and they tried something really cool, and I like it, but it didn't quite work out as an experience. Like, because the thing with like Marcus in Watch Dogs 2, it was this handcrafted character, and then you had a backstory, and you kind of learnt to love him. Whereas you don't really get that with Watch Dogs Legion.
Well, that was the problem, wasn't it? You didn't have anyone to hang your hat on. You know, as a protagonist.
No, and some of the voices, I think, you know what, being an English-born person and living in London and hearing some of those accents, it's as if a bunch of Americans sat around a table and go, "Hey, this is what the governors sound like in London, isn't it, governor?" Like, it's as if they went, "Oh yeah, you know what? That sounds just like a Londoner." And it's like, "In it, Gov." I was like, "Oh,
see,
I feel like one or two actors fleeced Ubisoft. They're like, "Yeah, I can do all the British accents. I can do London.
I could do Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah,
I could do Doc Cotton.
I can do posh London, and I can do the Cockney London, and I think that's it.
I can do gangs of London as well." It's like, oh man, it was actually painful for me to play, but it wasn't awful. It just was a disappointment. I expected it to be one of the year's biggest titles, just because it was really kind of innovative and really interesting mechanics. Just didn't really kind of nail it, and I do feel like that we'll never see that again. Watch Dogs will go back to being single character, set pieces, story driven. I genuinely believe that.
Did you guys, obviously outside the accents, how was London for you guys?
Oh, like, it was great.
Yeah, the city itself is really cool.
Yeah. Like, it's a really cool condensed version as well.
It's almost a shame that that city's been wasted on one of the lesser games in the series, isn't it? Like,
oh, and you know what? And they'll blame that for the success. And they will. It'll be like, why didn't Watch Dogs Legion do well? Well, nobody wants to go and play a game in London. Let's take it back to America. Let's take it back to the West Coast. Let's do Seattle. It's like, oh, come on.
I'd play in that setting again with a single character.
Oh, me
in
too.
A more interesting story.
Oh, absolutely. But they'll put... That's what, in my opinion, they'll blame the setting as part of it. Maybe.
I mean, it wasn't perfect either. It had bugs and things.
Oh, of course. You know.
I'm sure it plays nicely now. But.
Speaking of bugs, and I don't know why, but me and you spent an incredible amount of time playing Avengers.
I know.
And it was just the buggiest, most disappointing game of the year. Like, repetitive, like, didn't really have a lot to it. Actually, like, it's crazy that we'll talk about Cyberpunk in a minute, but like, Avengers came out and like, we've forgotten about how buggy that was because of Cyberpunk.
Well, I mean, they've gone some way now to fixing a lot of the main bugs that game had, so it's actually in a decent state now. But the problem is, everyone's
just no reason to
moved
go back,
on.
Right?
Yeah. Like, the campaign was good. I genuinely had fun with the single player.
Campaign
Once
was good.
it opens out into that multiplayer, though, it's like, what, I'm doing the same shit. Oh, we've got another clone of Taskmaster. Can you go and defeat him? No, thank you. I've already defeated him 10 times. Yeah. What about Abomination again? No. Same argument. I've killed him 10 times. I'm not... Yeah, ridiculous. Even with the promise of the new characters and that, they haven't released them soon enough.
Let's be honest as well. Hey guys, come back and play our game. Hawkeye is a new character. It's like, come on.
I can't believe they're doing 2 Hawkeyes as well. Like, they're not just doing one. The next character after Hawkeye is also Hawkeye. Like,
look, I don't care.
Famously the dullest Avenger.
Yeah. Like, I don't care whether it's Kate Bishop or Clint, is it?
Yeah.
Clint Barton. See, this is the thing, though. In the comic books, Hawkeye's actually quite cool. I think it's the sort of boring movie version.
And they definitely pulled from that, haven't they? But, you know, it might be quite cool when it comes to the Avengers game, but I think the problem is Hawkeye in the general consciousness is the Marvel one, isn't it? The Marvel Films one, and that's...
Do you know what, though?
Matt.
We are slagging off Hawkeye without having played the Hawkeye
we are.
DLC.
But that's the
more
about Hawkeye as a character.
It's the hype for it as well, isn't it? It's not a character you're going to get hyped for until you play it and go, oh, this is good. Like, it's not a character to get people back in. It's not like a Spider-Man or something, is it? Like,
well, the fact that when I interviewed the developers, they said they could have any Marvel character they like. That's the one they picked to go with first.
Yeah. It's because everybody else is really cool. Captain America throws a shield that comes back to him and he can do these crazy moves. Hawkeye's just got a bow. Like, it's like Black Widow. If you choose Black Widow in that game and you stand far and just shoot with a gun, I mean, that's not fun at all for me anyway. Like, I want to get in the mix.
I'm all about the Hulk. I want to get in there, yeah.
Yeah, and speaking about getting in there, let's get in there and let's talk about Cyberpunk 2077, this is really hard for me to talk about because I absolutely adore Cyberpunk 2077. I played it on a Series X. In my opinion, it's my favourite game of all time. I love the world, I love the story, the characters, everything about that game. I absolutely adore the RPG mechanics and all that. But it came out in such an unacceptable fashion on last-gen consoles. Almost deceptively came out in not even a working state on the last-gen consoles. That it's just left a sour taste in everybody's mouth. But personally, I adore it. But
do you realise everybody who's listening now can only hear white noise because you said it's your favourite game of all time, and they're still processing that.
But they're typing already, Rich. They can't hear you over the sound of their own typing into the comments.
Dan, you better check your Twitter, mate.
Yeah, but hold on. But this is great, right? Because the fact that it is my favourite game of all time, but I scored it accordingly, so I could prove that I can actually be objective when it comes to these things. That Cyberpunk is a great game, but it's so flawed on so many levels and so buggy that I'd be the first to kind of point that out. I was.
Yeah, it's different
actually,
saying
with our
it's your
comparison
favourite.
video. Yeah, it's different to saying favourite than best, but with the comparison video, like we were the first ones talking about how it was unplayable, and then everybody started talking about it literally the next day. Well, not in that, like hours later, and I'm like, oh, funny, we happened to bring that up first. But yeah, it was unacceptable to state, but I absolutely adored the game. But everything that's gone on around it, it's wow. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah. PlayStation pulling it off the store entirely, like that's completely unprecedented, isn't it? And it's
the right move though, isn't it? Because of the state that it is on the original consoles.
It's the only PR move Sony really had, because I was saying to someone else, Microsoft have a decent refund policy on the Microsoft Store. Like, people can get refunds on there, but PlayStation just don't do refunds unless you've not even played the game. So
CD Projekt kind of forced their hand as well.
Yeah,
CD
Projekt
you can go
ask Sony for a refund, and so I went, well,
it's
no.
crazy because it's like your mom going, go ask dad to borrow some money.
Yeah,
and it's
and your dad shutting it down.
Yeah, like, for me, like it's like the disappointment of the year, because I'm disappointed at how the state that it came out to the public.
Yeah,
it's shocking. But like, from a little bit of a selfish standpoint, I'm disappointed that the conversation is dominated by that, and rightly so, I want to point out, rather than talking about how good a game it actually is.
Yeah, if they put it out in a better state, you'd be able to be talking about all the actual game of it, like the game of Cyberpunk, as opposed to all the technical problems.
It's why the PC reviews are so high, because they played it on PC, but obviously our review came late because we run 2 console sites. So like, it's why... It's weird. It's why the original kind of glowing reviews were because they played a fantastic version. Like, there's no... But the deception about it was just them holding back the console code, knowing exactly... Like, they could say that they didn't really know the state of the code. Like, if they didn't know, then why was the console code so late?
Yeah.
Like, it's just... It's ridiculous. And, like... I don't blame the developers at all.
No.
I blame the higher-ups, the people that are managing the schedules. Like, you hear some stories coming out that every time they gave them unrealistic objectives and stuff like that, and it was almost destined to happen, kind of thing. But it's a wake-up call, and it's hit CD Projekt massively. I just hope they recover, because they're one of my favourite developers. Obviously, The Witcher 3, fantastic. Cyberpunk 2077. It's like one of my favourite games of all time, just because of the world, the setting, the music.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore it. But yeah, absolutely incredibly disappointing at the state that it came out in. And I don't want to say unforgivable, because I feel like everyone should make mistakes, but they're going to have to be grovelling now for a serious amount of time.
They've got an uphill battle to rebuild the trust they had.
They do. So they're going to have to And this is the horrible thing now, because it's going to fall on the actual devs, the coders, the people making the game to fix the mess. And like then CD Projekt is probably going to promise loads of stuff, and they're going to be forced into crunch. So it's just this horrible cycle that we're in now. And we're just taking the attention away from what is a good game, but rightly so, focusing on the fact that it was an incredibly disappointing launch, and they have got an uphill task, and I'd say like the hardest task. Like, people think about EA and their negative practices, but that goes back like 20 years. They haven't been that shady in the last like 10, 15, but no shadier than anybody else. But it's just the reputation that your company keeps and continues to keep in CD Projekt. To shake this now, I actually don't know whether they can, but I hope they do.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah, I do hope so as well. You'd hope that they'd learn from this, because they've not really had this problem before. They've not had this problem of the fame before, because they were a well-loved developer and publisher with like The Witcher 2 and stuff. The Witcher 3 catapulted them into the big leagues, and they've just not been able to deal with it, have they? Like they needed to delay this game for longer. They needed to make sure it was absolutely fine when it came out, and it just wasn't. It really wasn't okay, and they actively hid that. And you've got to hope that they learn that they can't pull the wool over people's eyes anymore. Like, they're too big to be given their game's a bit buggy, but they're a smaller developer. Like, that's not going to work anymore. It
just shows you as well that nobody is bulletproof in this industry.
No.
If you absolutely screw up, you will face the consequences.
Yeah.
And they are facing the consequences now. And I just hope that in a year's time we look back and go, okay, it was a horrible launch, but they've recovered.
Yeah.
And the game is now incredible, and it works. And obviously it's not going to look next-gen-y on the base consoles, but it should at least function. And like the fact that The Last of Us 2, I know it's a linear game and it's not open world, but the fact that, all right, let's say GTA 5, the fact that that runs and looks great on like the kind of the last-gen consoles. Like, if you can't get it to even that standard, it's disappointing. But I hope that in a year's time we can look back and go, oh, well, okay, they've at least fixed their mess and now we're moving forward. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah.
And speaking about moving forward, let's move forward to closing words. Like we talked about everything. We've hopefully covered everything. If there's stuff that we've missed, we apologise. Do remember that if there's like PC stuff we haven't talked about, we do run 2 console sites. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, we don't really cover stuff like Among Us, but also Among Us came out like years ago. It only got big this year, which is a fantastic story. But not a story for
also
us console centrics.
No Hades, because we don't run a Switch site.
No, but hopefully that comes to consoles.
I would like to see it on. I'd like to see it on Xbox and PlayStation.
I want to see what the fuss is about, to be honest. So, we'll do another little chat about 2021 early in the year. This is obviously our last video, but like to kind of just close things up, right? I'm going to ask you guys to score the year with a brief kind of summary of like why you think it's that score. Matt, let's go to you first. Let's get you on your toes. Give us a score.
I think I'm going to go for an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
New consoles were exciting, and there are some great games on them, and I like both the consoles for different reasons as well. Like, I like the Series X more than I was expecting to. I thought I'd be quite disappointed with that, that sort of seamless transition from Xbox One to Series X and stuff. But I quite like just, instantly, all my games are there, I can download them. I'm using it probably more than the PS5 at the moment. Again, with Game Pass as well.
And cloud saves as well. The cloud saves and the instantaneous nature of Microsoft's kind of back end is fantastic from going from one console to the other.
Yeah. So that's been great. And obviously I've also got like 360 games on there. You've got Dead Space and stuff on like Game Pass now with EA Play. And then on PS5 you've got all the great exclusives. And there's been some really good games out this year, and a load that I haven't gotten around to either, like some of the best games of the year.
Yeah, The Last of Us 2.
At the same time, apart from indies and a couple here and there, there's not been quite enough like new IPs from the big hitters. Like Ghost of Tsushima's really the only one, and Astro. But I'd like to see more sort of big AAA new IPs from Microsoft, which obviously looks like it's going to come in the future, which is very exciting. Like Perfect, even bringing back things like Perfect Dark. Like,
well, that's what I mean. I would have liked to have seen the initiative do something else, but it's Perfect Dark. I'm like, come on. I want something fresh. I want them to have a crack at a third person. I want them to have a crack at a Naughty Dog game. Microsoft to have something like that in their arsenal.
Yeah, Microsoft to have their own, like The Last of Us or their own Ghost of Tsushima or something like that. So I think there's not been quite enough of that for me, and it has been so PlayStation heavy. But then also there's just been some great. I don't even think the Bethesda going to Microsoft news is good news, but it's great news. Like, that's fantastic. It's just one of those things that you go, wow, that happened. Like,
I think if you own both consoles, it doesn't really matter. If you own a PC and a PS5, it won't really matter.
But it's just interesting as well. It's interesting. It's good to talk about, and there's been some nice bits of that, like some nice things to chat about in the industry, which I've really enjoyed. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for me. Like, pretty good. New consoles, always exciting.
Rich, score it.
6 out of 10.
6?
Love it.
6.
COVID. I've aged another year.
No, wait, Rich, we're not reviewing COVID.
Because that's too high, quite frankly.
Yeah.
All right.
You literally gave the year a 6 out of 10. COVID was one of the reasons.
Because the redeeming feature is the games.
Okay.
The games are so good.
Just the games focused.
Okay. Just the games.
You can still give it a 6, but just don't say COVID.
No, I'm going to give it an 8 as well, because I got Yakuza's on Game Pass. I got Yakuza 7. I got Streets of Rage 4. I've been enjoying Cyberpunk 2077 like you on the Series X. And yeah, it's just for games. It's actually been quite a strong year in the face of horrible, odds. The odds have been stacked against studios this year, and they've pulled it out the bag.
Yeah.
So no, I think an 8 is kind of the right score, and the consoles have been good too.
Yeah, see, this is the worst thing now when it comes to me scoring it. I actually
give it an 8.
I can't think of any other reason to give it any other score than an 8. It's not a 9 out of 10 year. It's not a golden year. New consoles are great. Both of them now, they work great. Like Demon's Souls, it was a traumatic weekend. I got through it. But, I look back on that experience now. It's like, wow, yeah, I'm glad I did that. The Last of Us 2, fantastic. It's so memorable. I think one of the most memorable games of all time for me, just because of the shocking moments and the set pieces. Just love it. Ghost of Tsushima, fantastic, obviously. And I'm just talking purely games here as opposed to the news as well. But I've put so many hours into Valhalla already. Yakuza, I'm absolutely loving. Ori was fantastic, and I've still got so many more to play. But for me, like Cyberpunk, it's brightened my year massively, but I'm playing it on a Series X. So obviously, if you're playing it on next-gen consoles, then it's going to be a great experience. But yeah, and there's so many games that I didn't expect. I didn't expect Manifold Garden, and I played it, and it blew my mind. It was absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, and even weirdly got a lot of enjoyment out of Avengers and Watchdogs Legion. So the disappointing games. I also played a lot of Tetris Effect Connected, which is phenomenal.
I need to get on that, actually. It is great. I do.
Oh, Matt, you've got to. Yeah, it's fantastic.
And then on top of that, I've still got Mars to play. I played a bit of Mars, really enjoyed it, Call of the Sea. So, yeah, you know what I mean? It's an 8 out of 10. Yeah, it's a very good year. New consoles. Game Pass, obviously, offering more value and stuff. And just, yeah, I agree with Matt. I would like to see more new IPs. I'm a sucker for new IPs.
Yeah, I loved Control last year.
Yeah, Control was fantastic.
That was a real standout for me in 2019.
They kind of soured that with their next-gen versions.
Yeah, but in my head, that's on 505. That's not on Remedy.
True. And Remedy make good games. Yeah. Alan Wake is fantastic. Right, chaps. I think I'm just going to say the thank yous right now to everyone. Just before we go, I do want to thank everyone that's subscribed to us on YouTube over the last year. That's read all of our stuff on the sites. That is genuinely just kind of followed us and support us and kind of worked with us through the teething moments of the new sites, and obviously the stat stuff, the stat tracking is going to go live. I'm hoping this is. I probably shouldn't say this. Actually, when's this going out? This is going out in between Christmas and New Year, so it might already be live. Yeah. But if not, like first week in January, I'm hoping. And then we push on to 2021 being a fantastic like new era for the sites. Our YouTube stuff, like we love doing, and there'll be loads of comparison stuff next year. I enjoy editing the shit out of that, while the other guys like keep me sane. But yeah, like, thank you very much for everyone that's read every bit of news, read every feature, read every review, and watched every video and commented and just been really nice in the comments, which is actually surprising.
Thanks.
How dare you, Rich? Like, there was 600,000 on that Cyberpunk video.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we had a good year across the board, and want to thank everyone for their support. And obviously, it's been fun. But next year is going to be even better, and I can say that because I know what's coming. But we'll do a games chat for 2021, early in 2021. But in the meantime, folks, have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And yeah, if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at _DanWebb. Rich is at RichieW82.
Yep.
And Matt is at Matt Lorrigan.
Yep.
Is that correct?
MattLorrigan.
Look, and that wasn't even rehearsed. I just managed to know those. And obviously, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow the sites Xbox Axe, ACHS, and PS Troughs, TROPHS. And also Resero Network, of course, on Twitter. Folks, thank you.
Is that just at Resero, is it? Or Resero Network?
Oh, mate, I can't remember. You put me on the spot now.
Do you want me to look it up?
Embarrass me in front of my friends.
I think it's Resero Network, Rich.
You are correct.
Of course I am. Yeah, and if you watch it on YouTube,
one word.
or not watching on YouTube, or listening on the sites, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us for some festivities next year. But yes, chaps, thanks very much for spending an hour with me, and I'm going to say a goodbye from me, goodbye, a goodbye from Richard,
Goodbye,
and a goodbye from Matt.
Goodbye. We love you.
We do.
Bye everyone.